From the University of California, Irvine, this is UCI Minds Spotlight on Care, the podcast where we share stories, experiences, tips, and advice on caring for loved ones affected by Alzheimer's and other dementias.
Welcome to Spotlight on Care. We are so lucky to have a caregiving expert with us today to talk about caring for a difficult parent who has Alzheimer's or other dementia. So our guest is Pamela D. Wilson. She is an international resource for caregivers and has worked in the field of aging and caregiving since 1999. Pamela has successfully managed care for thousands of clients and supports caregivers through consultations, speaking, and advocacy, and has a website with information that every caregiver would find helpful called PamelaDWilson.com. She has written a wonderful book called The Caregiving Trap: Solutions for Life's Unexpected Changes. Along with her book and website, she has a podcast radio show called The Caring Generation, many social media platforms, and even has hundreds of helpful videos on her YouTube channel. We will include the links to these resources in our show notes. So welcome, Pamela. We're glad you could join us.
Thank you for that very gracious welcome.
Well, if I really read your bio, it would take up all the time we have for podcasting. So I did the best I could to chop it down.
You did great.
Thanks. Well, let's start today by having you tell us a little about yourself and how you became such an expert on caregiving.
You know, I had an interest in helping people, older adults, from a very young age. I can't explain why. I think it was because I spent so much time around older people in my family, and they doted on me, and they were so kind to me. So early in my career, I worked for corporations and did marketing and sales things. And then life started to happen. My oldest sister was killed in a car accident. My parents died. My brother died. And earlier in life, I had a social work scholarship that I didn't take. And I thought, why didn't I do that helping people thing, right? So changed course and started a company back when these companies didn't even exist, right? So going into the homes of elderly to take care of the elderly and the disabled. And then that transitioned into a care management company and a professional fiduciary company, which really is where the bulk of my experience comes from. So I was a court-appointed guardian for people with Alzheimer's or dementia or cognitive problems, a trustee, a medical and financial power of attorney, personal rep of the estate. And so that gave me such amazing experience that is just so rare that I'm able to help people because I've lived their experiences, I've lived their lives through helping all of these clients over the years and through my family experience.
You've really done it all. Well, I know you're going to be helpful today to a lot of people, even caregivers in general, not necessarily caregiving for dementia, but caregiving in general, I think is going to touch on a lot of these topics. So let's start today by asking you, it seems to me that a lot of parents do not like taking advice from their children. What is that all about? And what do you suggest people do when they have a difficult parent who doesn't want to take advice from a child?
Well, so just to give some context, it depends on what the difficulty is. Is it that a parent didn't ask for advice and the children are giving their advice? So like unsolicited advice. Or is difficult that children are trying to help parents and parents are saying, no, I don't want to do that, or you don't know what you're talking about. So there can be a number of reasons. One, the obvious is parents didn't ask for the advice. The second part is that caregivers who are not the age of their parents can have a real gap in understanding what the parents are going through. So they may be offering advice and the parents may be thinking, this doesn't relate at all to my situation. It's kind of like being a caregiver and having non-caregivers talk to you, right? And they're like, oh, it's not, that's easy. What are you sweating about? Why is it so hard? It should be, what are you so frustrated about? This is easy, right? So because caregivers have not been in the experience of their parents may not want to take their advice because they're like, well, the kids have no idea what we're going through and they're not listening, right?
Right.
So there's a number of issues that could be going on when children see their parents as being difficult and the parents are saying, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to listen to you. all of that comes into play.
A lot of times I don't think the parent knows yet that they need help, especially if dementia is involved, of course.
Oh, yes. Dementia takes all this off the table because it depends on how, the stage of the dementia. If somebody's very early in the process, they can understand that they're going to need help. But if those conversations didn't happen early on and there was no planning, or if it's, somebody has dementia and they're well into the diagnosis before they're diagnosed, that causes all kinds of problems too.
Yes, exactly. What are common caregiving challenges? I mean, is it the parent's attitude? Is it the child who may be 55 years old? Is it attitude? What are some strategies for common caregiving challenges?
Sometimes it's just misaligned goals. And I'll use my family as an example. So the children, right, got together to talk about care for the parents. We didn't include our parents, right? Our plan was, well, dad's going to die first. We'll just move mom around. She can live with us and we'll take care of her. Well, that's not at all what happened because we didn't have a conversation with our parents about what they wanted. So part of it is if everybody doesn't sit down and have a conversation about, well, mom or dad, what happens when you need care or what kind of care do you want? The children kind of go off on their own plan and the parents are like totally somewhere else.
Exactly. And it's not an easy conversation to have, is it?
It's not. I have been in situations where parents say, oh my gosh, I wish my kids would listen. They need to hear this. And then I've been in situations where the kids are saying, we're trying to talk to the parents and our parents won't listen. So everybody on both sides has to kind of be ready to have these conversations.
So is that something, Pamela, that, as a strategy you would recommend to both, dementia patients early on, MCI kind of situation, as well as the children? Hey, have a conversation as this all gets started so that everybody gets hopefully on a similar page in terms of what the desires of the parents are. Like, I want to live in our house as long as we can. We know that's one of the issues that'll come. Is that what you're saying? Like early conversation?
Yes, have the conversation early, even before you have any health problems or you get sick. It could be the kids saying, gosh, mom or dad, we're all young, we're all healthy, but what happens if? What happens if you get dementia? What happens if you get Alzheimer's? What happens if you get sick? What do you want? Because we're thinking about that for ourselves and our kids.
Okay, maybe it's an easier angle.
It's so much easier when there are no health problems because you're not emotionally distraught, right? You're not worried about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right. And no one likes to think about it. I don't like to think about being in a care home.
No.
Really
or getting old or getting sick or
getting
dying,
old.
right? Nobody wants to talk about that.
It's true. No, very, very, very true. Speaking to a difficult parent, is there a way to make them listen? Tone of voice or body language? How do those things come in?
So a couple of things come into play. Getting someone to listen to you means that you listen to them first, right? So it's about asking questions saying, mom or dad, hey, how are you today? What's going on? Do you have any concerns? Are there things I can help you with? Now, obviously, if you're caring for somebody with dementia, they may not be able to answer those questions. But my belief about people with dementia is they kind of have horse sense. Horses know if you're upset. They know if you have a smile on your face. They know if you're like gritting your teeth or you're holding your fists. I mean, any kind of body language, anything that is out of the norm can be very upsetting for someone with dementia who that's all they can see. They can't really understand what you're saying, but they sure can see your body language.
Yes. And they react to it.
Yes.
It's not easy to look how you want to look, but you're approaching a difficult topic. You can tense up and it's all over your face that there's something that's not going to be pleasant to talk about.
It is. And that's why it's so important to prepare. You've got to if you're going to have a difficult conversation, you want to have it when you're going to be in the best mood that you can be. You want to plan for it. And you always want to have a plan B. So if this conversation doesn't go well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, hey, let's just come back to this. We'll talk about it in a couple of days. You got to have an exit strategy for when it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go.
Okay. Maybe it's something as simple as, let's just stop and have a bowl of ice cream.
Mm-hmm. Or gosh, you know what? There's a TV show on. Let's go watch that.
Right.
Just kind of redirect the conversation.
Redirect. That's a big one with dementia. Definitely.
Pamela, I've heard people who are caregivers kind of reiterate all the issues. Like, well, mom or dad, you've got this. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. And I've always counseled that you don't start with a litany. You just start with your concern. If it's personal, hey, I love you, and I'm just worried about your care, and let's talk about your worries, and then sit back and listen. And I think that's what you're also saying, right?
It's to ask more questions and to give less observation. So none of us like to be told, right, that we're, not bathing, not eating, not following doctor's advice. It's like nagging, right? So it could be something like, hey, mom or dad, I noticed that you seem to be losing weight. Is there something going on? Or I noticed that this happened. Tell me about that, and just leave it. So instead of being naggy or judgmental, say, hey, what's this about? I'm just curious, and see what they say.
It's not confrontational.
Not at all, because that does not work. As most caregivers know. I mean, it doesn't work in normal life, right? It doesn't work with our friends or at work or anywhere.
That is so true. I've noticed while listening to a lot of your podcasts that you talk about boundaries a lot. What, how, why, when? How do you set them? How do you know when to set a boundary for your loved one, yourself and your siblings even?
So a boundary comes up when you kind of feel uncomfortable about something, right? It's like, that doesn't make me feel good, or that's not right. So it could be as simple as, your parents expect you to show up every Saturday, right? And you've kind of done it for a while, but you're dreading it and you're starting to be resentful and you don't like your parents anymore, right? That's kind of pushing your boundaries. And so you may say, mom or dad, I know I agreed to do this, or I've been doing this, but I'm going to change it, and it's going to be every other week, right? So that I can have a weekend to myself. So our boundaries get pushed when, things trigger us, or we feel uncomfortable about something, or we keep saying yes, 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 and we really want to say no because we feel guilty. So we have to realize what our boundaries are and then look at, what can I realistically do? Because caregivers think they can do everything and they have to do everything. And the problem is, and this is kind of excluding parents with dementia or Alzheimer's, right? The more that you do to help somebody, the more dependent you make them on you. And so then caregivers are taking over their parents' lives, and yet they're complaining that they have so much work to do when they didn't ask mom or dad if they could do this. They just took it over.
Okay. As the dementia progresses, a lot of times I think caregivers don't really have much of a choice. Although what you're saying is you got to really think seriously about this, hiring help to help, or even going into assisted living.
Yes. And in a perfect world, if these discussions happened before the dementia, you would have a plan. But in the event that you don't, you really have to look at, what is your health as the caregiver? Do you have a family? Are you married? Do you have children? Are you working? Do you have all these things to do? And how is this caregiving affecting you? So that you can kind of look forward and say, when this happens, when mom or dad need this much help, we do need to look at a care community or bringing caregivers into the home or other options for care, because I can't do it all.
Right. We talked before about finding out what the parents' financial situation is, just in case they do need to eventually hire help or do a placement in a community, because it is not inexpensive.
No, it's very expensive. And so in a perfect world, in the planning stages, when you're having these conversations about money and health, I always recommend, especially if there's an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, to investigate Medicaid. In California, it's Medi-Cal. It's different names in different states, right? It's a state-by-state program, but it's a program for elderly who are low income and need care. So investigate that long before you need it, so that you know what documents you need to apply, what the qualifications are. In some cases, if parents were veterans in wartime service, there may be some benefits from the VA. Investigate all sources of ways to pay for that care, because it's very expensive, especially for people with Alzheimer's or dementia.
It's true. It seems like it shouldn't be that much, but it is. What do you do if your parent really refuses help and they need it?
So 2 scenarios: parent without Alzheimer's or dementia. Parents have a right, if they are cognitively able Everybody has a right to say no. Everybody has a right to choose. Now, that doesn't mean that they're making good decisions. We all have the right to make bad decisions, as we all have done at some point in our life. Okay?
Yes.
So sometimes adult children just have to be okay with, you know what? Mom or dad disagree. They're refusing help. But then you say, Mom or Dad, I'd really love to help you with this, but you're refusing. So I'm going to back off and let you do this yourself. And then you kind of wait to see the consequences, right? And let your parents live with the consequences and see if at that point they're going to ask for help. Now, if somebody has Alzheimer's or dementia, I'm hoping that by this time you are the medical power of attorney or the financial power of attorney or the guardian. Because at that point, you have a legal responsibility and a duty to get them the help they need, whether they want it or not.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that's what you sign up for. A lot of people, I have 2 courses on my website about power of attorney and guardianship. People accept these responsibilities and they don't understand their legal duty. You cannot let a parent, for example, stay at home if they're wandering out of the house at 2 a.m., every night and the neighbors down the street are finding them, right? It's not a safe situation. You have to do something. You either have to bring somebody in to stay with them all night, look for a care community, find options. It's your legal responsibility to keep them safe and healthy and well. And that's hard for children. That's why I used to be appointed by families, because they didn't want to be the bad guys. They didn't want to be the one who made mom move into the assisted living or into the nursing home, or, who told mom or dad they had to do this, right? It's hard when you're the children.
That's an interesting point. Sometimes a third-party person can act and be helpful in terms of the debate between children and their parents. I found that the doctor was always the place that I went with my wife, and I would assume it's the same with children, where you say, well, this is what we heard. Even if they don't remember, the fact that you're repeating it makes it easier for someone else to accept if it isn't confrontational from person to person.
Well, and sometimes people are at a point where they can't even understand what you're explaining, right? So honestly, there were situations where I had clients who were living in their homes and I had to move them. And I told them once and that was it. I never told them again. And on moving day, we went to the grocery store and we ended up somewhere else.
Wow.
Because they cannot comprehend. And all you're doing is stressing them out by saying, we have to do this. They just don't understand. There's a point where you just make it happen in the kindest, most possible way that you can.
That is so interesting. I hadn't thought about it from the responsibility, obligation part. I thought of it as a privilege when I had financial power of attorney for my mom. I thought of it as a privilege that I had to oversee to make sure things were okay. I didn't really think I had a duty.
Oh, yes.
But you do.
You could end up in court at any time. That was the one thing about being a fiduciary. It was full transparency. I mean, family members could ask why I was doing something. The judge could say, Pamela, why did you make that decision? You have to make good decisions based on the information that you have and what the person would have wanted if they could have told you that before,
Yes.
Before the diagnosis.
2 questions. One, what about multiple children in the discussion? And the second part of the question is, what happens if there's a disagreement? If a disagreement occurs, in other words, you're having a meeting with your parents, and all of a sudden there's a disagreement between 2 or 3 children about what it is the parents should do. What's your advice?
You never go into a meeting with your parents unless you've had a separate meeting with your siblings.
Oh, good point.
The advice is you have to have a united front. Now, not everybody's always going to disagree. So the question is, can you come to some kind of consensus? Okay. If not, then who is that legally responsible party? Is it one of the children? Because you may be the child who has to say, look, based on all of these facts, not emotions, this is the choice I'm going to make. And I understand you may disagree with me, but can you support this? So what you don't want is what I call triangulation, right? One sister saying, oh, mom or dad, Sherry's just horrible because she thinks this. You want to present as much of a united front as you can, even if people disagree.
And why is that important to someone with dementia?
Because it can be so confusing. It's kind of like the emotional aspect of, right? So you have kids showing up and the person with Alzheimer's or dementia can tell somebody's upset and they're uncomfortable, right? You want to make your parent as comfortable as possible and the relationships as pleasant as possible. You don't want to bring your personal problems into that relationship. It doesn't belong there, but it's hard for family members to do. That's why the united front is helpful, because it makes it easier on that person. I mean, let's face it, do you want to make things harder for your parent because of your emotional issues? Or do you want to make life easier for your parent? You have a choice to make.
What about multiple people in the conversation? Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It depends on the level of progression of the memory loss. If a parent can get 3 words at the beginning of the sentence and by the time you get to the end, they can't remember, you don't even have the conversation. So it really is case by case. How much can my parent understand and how much can they participate? Because you don't want to overwhelm them either.
No, I was thinking I was referring, so there's 4 kids. Do all 4 kids show up for the meeting, or is it one person? And what's the pros and cons of one kid being there and then all of a sudden the parent goes, well, I'm going to talk to Joey instead of you, Susie, or all 4 of the kids are there and it is a united front. I can see pros and cons of both approaches.
So again, it depends on each situation. So when I talk to children about how to approach parents, it's like, who does the parent have the best relationship with? Is there one children out of 4 that should approach the parent? Or does the parent prefer to have all 4 of them there? So you have to look at it case by case. And again, what you're trying to do is give the parent confidence and comfort that everything's going to be okay. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm. I remember when we called a family conference together with my mom, who had Alzheimer's, to tell her that she shouldn't drive.
Mm.
And it felt a little like we were ganging up on her, but we ended up convincing her that it was the best idea. But the next day she said, oh, well, it's time for me to go home. Where are my car keys?
Mm-hmm. Driving is a hard one. It's a very hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It is. Steve ran a support group for men. And my next question has to do with the value of support groups relating to, does it help with caregiver stress and caregiver guilt? What are your thoughts about having the caregiver join a support group?
I think support groups are very good. Now, I've had some caregivers get into the wrong groups. So it depends on what the caregiver wants to get out of the group. One caregiver said, Pamela, I joined this group and it was negative. It was a complaint session. There were no solutions given. There was no positivity. It was miserable, right?
Okay.
So it depends on what you want to get from a group. Do you want positivity? Do you want people to support you? Do you want suggestions? So kind of like, parents not wanting children's advice. I run a support group too. And my question is always, are you venting or do you want solutions? What do you want so that we can give you what you want?
Yeah, my experience is all support groups have both of those moments. There are the moments of venting and you just let someone, sometimes it even involves tears. They just have to get it off their chest. And then you turn around into, okay, well, where do we go from here? What do you think we should do? And we also talked about don't tell, just relate. The idea is, what's my story, rather than, well, you shouldn't do that, Steve. This and this and this and this and reasons, rather than, well, here's what I learned. It's all in the approach. Yeah. But
it's very much in the approach because every, like we talk, every situation is different. And it's like, so what is it like? What is it like to be you today? Is it a good day or a bad day?
Yeah, very good. We're just about ready to start wrapping up here, but I want to ask you, what do you do if you just decide you can't be the caregiver any longer?
So again, I'm going to go back to the planning, right? If you've had the planning discussions, you might know about your parents' finances and all of that. But if you do get to the point and you haven't had these discussions, I'm hoping you have. Again, it kind of depends on, are you the power of attorney or not?
Okay.
Because if there is no power of attorney, if there is no guardianship and your parent has dementia and you can't do it, you're going to have to find a way to get some kind of legal permission to be able to make things happen, right? If your parent still is at a point where they can decide and they're still managing things, then it's a conversation saying, Mom or Dad, I can't do this anymore. I'm here. Let's make a plan to have care come in or have you go somewhere. What are your preferences? What do you want? But again, it depends on the stage of the memory loss, which of those conversations you're having and what you're able to do. But it's okay to say that you can't do it anymore because some caregivers, give up their jobs. I've seen caregivers get divorced because of caregiving issues, or their kids are suffering in school.
Yep.
You never want to, I hate to say the word destroy, but destroy your family life because you're a caregiver for a parent and that has just taken over your life.
Yes.
Which sometimes it does.
I imagine it does.
It is okay to say no.
Yeah, it's the guilt factor that probably comes in and people just feel too guilty saying they can't do it, but it's wrecking their own family and their own peace of mind. And
it may not even be good for the parent, because if you're that frustrated and angry, how are you coming off to your parent? Are you a good caregiver anymore?
Very good point.
Exactly.
You may not be the best caregiver anymore.
Yeah, I think I hear you saying, and I'd be interested to get your comment, it's about acting sooner rather than later. This whole process of being a caregiver, waiting for the proper moment. I mean, certainly the timing is important, but sometimes as a caregiver, you're like, well, gee, I don't want to make them uncomfortable. I don't want to deal with it. It's difficult. They're not happy. I'm going to just wait for another time. And all of a sudden, it doesn't get any easier being a caregiver. So the idea of planning and acting early is really critical.
Right.
And it's critical for the caregiver too, because as you all know, the caregivers many times have health issues because of caregiving, right? They're stressed, they have diagnosis. It's kind of like whatever you're doing for a parent, you should be doing for yourself in respect to planning, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring.
It's a tough job.
Very tough job.
Do you have any other comments or questions, Steve, before we wrap this one up?
Well, I think this has been terrific from my perspective. I learned some things, which is always great about these calls is, there's so much to have and experience, that can be shared. And you obviously have a lot. And I can tell from your tone and your approach that this is a calling for you. This isn't a job.
No, it's not. It's been a long, almost 25 years now that I've been doing this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to describe it, Steve. It's a calling for Pamela.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us so much good and useful information on caring for a loved one who isn't easy to care for.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Sure. Again, Pamela's website is PamelaDWilson.com, and her book is called The Caregiving Trap: Solutions for Life's Unexpected Changes. And we will be sure to put the links to those resources in our show notes today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and join us again soon for another episode of Spotlight on Care.
Spotlight on Care is produced by the University of California, Irvine Institute on Memory Impairments and Neurological Disorders, UCI Mind. Interviews focus on personal caregiving journeys and may not represent the views of UCI Mind. Individuals concerned about cognitive disorders, prevention, or treatment should seek expert diagnosis and care. Please subscribe to the Spotlight on Care podcast wherever you listen. For more information, visit mind.uci.edu.